Okay, hello everybody. This is CounterYolo, back after a couple years of not making videos. As I promised a little while ago, if Star Trek Online would ever make a Legendary Bortasqu, that I would return and make the video. So, that is what today's video is. We got a new Legendary bundle, and the Legendary Bortasqu is in there. So, that is what today's video is going to be about. I will briefly talk about some of the changes that have occurred in the game since I last made a video about 22 months ago. And then we'll get into the Legendary Bortasqu and the Legendary Avenger. Feel free to see the description or the time bar at the bottom of the screen for the time links in the video. There'll be the intro like normal, outro, and then these three different sections. So feel free to see those if you want to jump around a little bit. As for the different changes that have occurred, first off, the specializations have gotten significant reworks and buffs. What it comes down to it is that Temporal, Pilot, and Intel are all good specializations now for energy-based builds, like really good, besides just Command Primary. And because of that, I mean, Mirror Worker, Pilot, Temporal, and Intel are all good energy-based specializations in the game. Command is still more for tanking in torpedo/kinetic builds, but other than that, I mean, all the specializations are good specializations now for PvE content. So that is really good. It also means when it comes to like those Starship tier lists, a lot of them are kind of obsolete now because of how much the specializations have changed since that time. From a meta perspective, we have gotten new engineering consoles as well. Now the consoles are expensive, but they are really good. And when it comes to energy-based builds, Starships with a lot of engineering consoles are going to be good for doing a lot of DPS. Granted, a lot of the Starships with a lot of engineering consoles are also Starships without Commander Tactical. So you're going to see that a lot of your energy-based like high-end runs are still going to be ships with lots of tactical consoles instead of engineering consoles, but it basically just comes down to the math as to whether one is better than the other. EPH289 over on Reddit and on his own site STO Better has done breakdowns for this if you want to see the math as to whether these new consoles are better than your fleet locators and exploiters. So see his charts and stuff as to which is better. As for the Elite Captain and Elite Bridge Officer token upgrades that have released in the past few years, the Captain one is fine, but the Elite Bridge Officer tokens are pretty much a cash grab. When it comes to space, most of your better space bridge officers, their trades were already pretty much maxed out anyway for the ones that were recommended by the community. When it comes to ground combat, you don't really need a ton of like super good ground traits. You can optimize and find some really good ground officers in the game. If you really want to spend money to make their traits better, to be better in ground combat, I recommend just going to my really old video that's 4 years old at this point. It talks about how to make your away team much better, much more effective for ground combat in a cost-effective way. That being said, you know, the economy of scale of like how expensive space combat is versus ground is not very expensive. Like, especially in comparison to space, like the price of this bundle on sale is like about the same price that you would pay if you're trying to like min max like your captain for ground combat. Like if that, like ground combat is not that expensive compared to space in this game. The bigger thing, of course, for changes besides the engineering consoles is that we have yet another upgrade token for Starships. And that's going to make the biggest difference in this video in particular, because I normally compare Starships in terms of their base stats to whatever is the most upgraded possible for the ship. They used to be tier 6X in these videos. It's now going to be tier 6X2, and this is how I'm going to be labeling them as such in this video. Technically, it should be a capital X if we're going to match what's in the game, but I just didn't like how it looked in the slides, and so I just made it a lowercase x. Again, Cryptic made this because they felt that adding tier 7 starships to the game would probably kill the game, and they're probably right. Now, The other thing that changed with the release of this bundle is that we get the flagship set as a, well, let me put it this way. The flagship set is really, really good inside the game. It's always been great. It used to be tied to the Odyssey, the Bortasqu, and the Scimitar. It's now usable on all starships. Now, this does make the Legendary Odyssey crap. I'll talk about why when we get to it. But what it means is that basically any character, any starship can use the 2-piece for damage or the 3-piece for tanking. Now, when it comes to these consoles, the flagship tactical computer probably should be used on all runs now when it comes to IC and HSC, because this firing cycle, haste, and movement buff is team wide. Granted, this console has a 1-minute lockout duration. Like all consoles and abilities that are team wide have a 1-minute lockout duration. It's no different with this console. So if your IAC or especially ISA run is going to be less than a minute, only have one person in your team have this. Probably your tank if you really need it, but tanks are really more for IC and HSC. Beyond that, of course, we have Adaptive Mercy Systems, which if you look at the stats in this clicky, this is basically a budget DPRM console. Granted, the DPRM console from the Atlas Dreadnought Cruiser is something that has kind of fallen a bit lower in priority in the DPS meta for a long time. The DPRM is still a great console to put on tanks, though, and especially having an account unlock DPRM like console for tanks is really, 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 really nice. Especially because, I mean, 3-piece is fantastic for tanks, so getting 30% bonus all damage and temporary HP. So I really love that this is available on all starships now. Now, the downside is that if you're trying to get the 3-piece for tanking, the third console has typically been non-optimal for a lot of builds, because this is the Damping Wave Emitter console is a science console. It is a clicky EPG console. Because the flagship set can be used on all starships now, you might start seeing this console show up on your support-based builds for ISC and HSC. I'm not sure if it's 100% going to be meta, but especially as a filler console to do that type of role, I think this console has that use at least. Whether the radiation damage scaling with EPG and your secondary reflector and stuff is going to be worth it or not, that you can leave for your DPS optimized players on YouTube and Twitch and Reddit and such. We can let them deal with the math for that. That's not the purpose of this video, nor what I've typically done for the past years. If you're doing the 3-piece for tanking, you ideally want the timeline stabilizer. It is unfortunately not from the flagships, even though it's part of the flagship set for bonuses. This ship is from the Crenum Science Vessel, which is a really, really old event starship. So if you didn't unlock that starship from that event a long time ago, you currently have to get an epic drop from Phoenix packs in order to be able to get this console for a single character. With the flagship set now usable on all starships, I do expect the Crenum Science Vessel to show up as a single purchase option in Mud's Market. As to whether Crypto will do that in the near future or in the faraway future, I'm not sure. I have not seen Mud's Market bundles ever include Phoenix pack starships, so I don't expect it to ever show up there. But for a single purchase starship, I could definitely see this showing up as a big demand from players at some point. Now, if Crypto wants to make more money and unlock more consoles from more starships, I do think their priority for making money is to unlock the Not Cool set. And it's because the Temporal Distress Beacon is a really, really good console that does not get talked about enough. It is a 12% crit severity console, which is good for consoles. And its clicky is it's an invulnerability console. Assuming that your time subduplicate survives for the full duration, it's 30 seconds of immunity. And unlike most clicky consoles, it is a 2-minute cooldown. So it's 2 minutes versus 30 seconds of invulnerability, so that's like 25% uptime potentially. Really, really great for tanks. None of the not cool starships have full specialization, which really hurts those ships a lot in modern STO. So having this available on other starships would be really, really, really nice. Also, for it'll probably wreck PvP substantially. Most PvP stuff always has this as one of the banned consoles anyways. That would just make that even more apparent. But honestly, for other starships too, I think this would be a great filler console as well. As for other stuff from a more utilitarian standpoint, I do think the 31st Century set really deserves to be usable on all starships, because we don't have that many taunts in the game, frankly. Now, the Chrono Tech Incapacitor does more than taunting. You can read this whole thing here. It does a lot more than taunt. But its noble thing is that it does taunt. It taunts and does other good stuff for you as a tank. I think it should be usable in all starships, period. Now, alongside that, the Tactical System Stabilizer is the budget Domino console. That is what this console is. It is Domino in a different form, because it is a haste and cooldown reduction console. That's what Domino does. And so you have that other option here. Now, its other console that's from the Eternal is a filler EPG console that once you get better consoles, you just ditch this thing entirely. So this one's kind of like the not really worthy one that really I've mentioned here, but the other two ones definitely are. Before we get into the comparisons, I do just want to have this slide here just to have you see both of these battlecruisers just side by side, so you can see kind of like how the stats differ and are similar. Both of them have a 1.5 hull ratio, 5 forward weapons, and both of them have a secondary Lieutenant Commander Intel specialization. When, in my opinion, Crypto was looking at this to make a bundle for Legendary Bortasqu, they're like, we keep on getting hounded about needing a Legendary Bortasqu. You know, we've released 2 Tier 6 Odysseys with full specializations at this point, and a Legendary Scimitar eventually. Yeah, we probably should add a Legendary Bortasqu. What Federation Starship should we add with the Legendary Bortasqu for a bundle that we think could actually sell? And so they looked through their catalog, and they were like, oh, hey, we realized that the Picard Season 3 model for the Inquiry is really, really cheap to put into the game. What if we just added a Legendary Avenger and just paired it with this ship? Cool! Hey, they're both battlecruisers. Let's just be uncreative and call it the Legendary Battlecruiser bundle. So yeah, in my opinion, that's basically what happened. They were looking for trying to make a bundle with the Bortasqu, making it really cheap, and they pumped it out. It's also why both of the new skins, technically, for these ships are pretty basic. I would say because the Avenger one uses the Picard Season 3 model, it's the better new skin. And again, for most of the other new stuff, it's really just the 2 new traits. And I'll let other YouTubers have their piece with those traits. They're fine. Like at least they're workable. Unlike some legendary ships in which the trait was complete garbage. These traits are at least workable and serviceable for certain builds. I will leave it at that. As for the Legendary Bortasqu, this is a cloaking torpedo platform. That is what this thing is built to do. It's meant to be a stealth bomber. Now, as for it being that role, well, it's not very maneuverable. Basically, all the other stealth bomber-like starships in the game have high maneuverability with its enhanced battle cloak. This ship does not have that. Now, you can use traits and other things to get maneuverability, but it inherently on its own does not have that. Now, if you are looking at other stats, and its base stats and such, maneuverability, it does fall more in line with a Juggernaut or other starships in the Dreadnought subclasses in the game, like Science Dreadnoughts, Dreadnought Cruisers, and Juggernauts are just a tactical version of that. So it is slightly disappointing that this ship is not a juggernaut. That being said, if we're comparing it in terms of DPS you're losing in the mastery package, it's not very much. You know, both battlecruisers and juggernauts have that 15% crit severity in the mastery package. What you're losing is 2.5% crit chance, 5 accuracy, and 10% energy damage. Well, this is a torpedo platform, so the energy damage loss isn't really a factor here. What you're losing is that 2.5% crit chance and that 5 accuracy. Not really that huge in the grand scheme of things, to be honest. The biggest thing you're really losing for this ship not being a juggernaut is no commander tactical seat. That is what you're truly losing, which means for a torpedo boat, it's not that big of a deal. If you want to make this ship not a torpedo boat and want to make this like a cannon scatter volley build, that is where you're actually going to be seeing the actual loss on the Starship itself, because just like the other Bortasqu, you don't get cannon scatter volley 3 with this Starship. That being said, you know, do I think that the ship is fine? Yes. Would it be cool if it was more offensive as a juggernaut? Sure. But hey, if they had to keep it as a battlecruiser, giving it an enhanced battle cloak over it just having a plain old boring cloak before, I think is totally fine. And again, you're getting full command, Lieutenant Commander intel. I think it's fine. And other than that, it's pretty much straight upgrades across the board. If you're someone who is still wanting just to stick with the old tier 6 Bortasqu, the Mortok is totally fine. If you're wanting to do a torpedo build, if you want to do an energy-based build, the K-less one probably is going to be a smidge better, just because you've got 5 engineering consoles versus 4. And for energy-based builds, having more engineering consoles is the ideal from a DPS standpoint. Cool? All right. I'll put in the 2 slides here to talk about juggernauts. Just so you can see that yes, from a base stat standpoint, the Bortasqu is in line with a lot of our other juggernauts inside the game. Especially against the Valor one, it's basically the same. Now the Wood Razor is probably our best juggernaut that we've got in the game right now, because both of its forced bridge offer seats are its specialization seats, which lends to a lot of flexibility in its bridge offer seating as to what you want to do with the rest of the Starship itself. As for the other 2 ships, I mean, 3 out of 4 juggernauts have at least Lieutenant Commander command to be able to really do fun stuff with torpedoes. The Liberty Borg Juggernaut is definitely the one that more lends towards tanking, because it's got really great base stats and reasonable bridge offer flexibility alongside seating that you would want ideally for tanking, frankly. Their Emerald Chain Juggernaut doesn't have a forced Lieutenant Commander engineering seat, unlike the rest of the juggernauts in the game. So there is that uniqueness to it too. As for the other flagships, we have the Odyssey, and unlike the other flagships, there actually are 2 different Odysseys with a commander specialization. Now the first Odyssey with full specialization is just one with just one command seat and nothing else. Now from a bridge offer flexibility standpoint, commander plus double lieutenant commander that all have the 3 different types of bridge offer seats is fine with Universal. There are other cruisers that are just better than this though, and the one thing that made this worthwhile with just one specialization seat was the fact that it could use the flagship set. This ship can't use the flagship set anymore. Well, sorry, not can't, but all ships can use the flagship set now. That's what I should have said. So as a result, the Legendary Odyssey doesn't have that much of uniqueness anymore when it comes to an optimization and bridge offer standpoint. So why use this ship when it's slower than most of the other starships? Its base stats are okay, but a lot of other cruisers in the game can just outpace this thing now. So do I think this ship is still serviceable for tanking? Sure. But there's a lot of ships in this game that are good for tanking. So it's like, would I really pick this ship anymore as one of my recommendations for people for tanking it anymore? Probably not. Now, if you have the 10th anniversary Legendary bundle, this is still your best tank in there, but I still wouldn't recommend it. Like, there are other ships you can get. There's fleet ships you can get that are going to be better than this. So that's just my rant there. The Terran Lexington is still a great broadsiding platform with Mirror Worker and Lieutenant Intel. This is also a standalone purchasable starship in the C-Store, which makes this pretty good for that. Its big downside, of course, now is, of course, one of the things that made it popular was, well, besides it being an Odyssey with this really cool deflector dish, it could use a flagship set. And now everybody can. So it's like a lot of people are going to be switching away from the flagships, is what it's going to come down to, and they're going to go to whatever is their favorite ship, which I think is going to be a good thing. It means now a lot of people who are looking at the flagship set as one of the best options for a lot of players, especially for players with multiple characters on their account. Now they're going to go to, okay, I might do a variety of starships and stuff with the flagship set. So overall, it's going to be good. It does mean you're going to see flagships less now, though. The Legendary Scimitar is still a great starship. They mentioned on the stream this week that they might look into making the battle cloak on the Scimitar better. I do agree that it's weird that it doesn't have that it doesn't have the enhanced battle cloak. It probably should, especially because its console at least gives a better cloak than any cloak in the game. There is probably some coding limitations in there, though, that could make it complicated. But from a bridge hours flexibility standpoint, this ship is fantastic. If you are wanting a scimitar with 4 engineering consoles, the Shamshir is the way to go. Otherwise, probably just sticking with the C-Store Scimitar or Legendary Scimitar is probably the way to go with that starship. And again, with the Scimitar, it's Intel Command instead of Command Intel. You basically just flipping the specialization seating, and otherwise a very good ship. And so, if you don't care about the enhanced battle cloak and just want a torpedo boat, and you have the Legendary Scimitar, it can serve a very similar role with better flexibility in its seating. As for starships with enhanced battle cloaks, we've had a few ships that have been released recently that also have enhanced battle cloaks. Of all the ships that were released that have enhanced battle cloaks, the Terran Eagle is the most weird one that has an enhanced battle cloak. Like, granted, this is a long time ago, but whenever the Delta Rising expansion came out, the one that added Tier 6 starships to the game, kind of the rule that they made at that point was that part of what Commander Intel did to the game, or at least what it was supposed to do, was that it would enhance the cloak that a starship was supposed to have. So Federation ships wouldn't have a cloak, so they would get one. Klingons by default had a plain cloak, so they would get a battle cloak if they had Commander Intel, and Romulans would get the enhanced battle cloak if they had Commander Intel. Cryptic has slowly started to break that, which again, part of what has devalued Commander Intel so much, which is why it needed significant buffs, and it has. But it also means now that the enhanced battle cloak is no longer tied to Intel specialization anymore, which is kind of weird, because it also means that there's no rhyme or reason as to what ships get enhanced battle cloaks, which ones don't. Why the Terran Eagle gets a cloak at all doesn't make any sense to me. Feel free to let me know in the comments as to why this ship got a cloak. But anyway, it does. So it's a commander pilot with tank rider command. So when it comes to a stealth bomber starship, this is one too. And this is one you can get way cheaper than this bundle. So, or you buy a bundle for about the same price as this one and you get more than 2 ships. So there is that. to think about. The Legendary Talus was the old one for this. I mean, versus the flexibility of the Terran Eagle, I'd probably still go with the Terran Eagle. But if you're wanting to have the full mine layering thing, the Talus has some niche uses over the Eagle. It is way more expensive though, and no raider flanking to help with your DPS further. As rather Ramen Starships, of course, the other Talus also has an enhanced battle cloak because, of course, it does. It thematically should. But the Legendary Valdor also does, and it's got a hangar bay, and it generally is a cheaper starship to get for your entire account versus the Promo Talus. So, for most players, I probably recommend if you are wanting this particular Bridge Officer Specialization combination, the Legendary Valdor is probably what you're going to want to get instead. Just going to throw that out there. Of course, we have our two Bird of Prey starships with enhanced battle cloaks. The Legendary Burrell, I complained when that thing came out that it didn't have 5 forward weapons. It really should have. It's still weird why it doesn't, and that the event Bird of Prey did. Really weird. Now, I do think there are other starships to get if you're wanting something like this with enhanced battle cloak and command. Again, there are other starships I've just mentioned that are probably better than this. But if you happen to have it and want to do a stealth bomber thing, you can also do that too from a starship that you might have earned before. As for more KDF starships, I mean, we have 4 different D7s in the game now that are tier 6. The Kelvin D7 is the only one with a Lieutenant Commander command seat. The rest of them are more energy-based starships. So if you are wanting a D7 as a torpedo platform, the Kelvin D7 is your only option. The Disco D7 is energy with 2 hangar bays, and then your 2 different TOS D7s are both energy-based machines in different forms. Because of the specialization buffs, both of these D7s are really, really, really good. They're good in different ways, so feel free to talk to your favorite DPS player as to how to optimize these 2 different ships, because they do perform a little differently. Although, like at the end of the day, they are both energy-based starships. And we'll talk about more about the Legendary TOS D7 when we talk about the Legendary Avenger, because its bridge officing is very, very similar to what the Legendary Avenger is kind of based on. Before we get into my little tanking rant for this video, here's just 2 more KDF starships. We have the Fleet Miracle Battlecruiser, which again is a nice, fun KDF starship from the fleet if you are wanting DPS there. And then we have the Legendary Bortasqu from a really, really horrible anniversary bundle. But the ship is a good torpedo platform. That being said, you know, is it better than the Bortasqu still? It depends, and it really comes down to how were you going to use your 2 universal seats here. If you were intending to make this a tactical seat anyway, the Bortasqu is probably the better starship. If you weren't going to make this tactical, then you'd be really limiting yourself with what the Bortasqu is offering you. So I do think there are going to be situations where DPS players may be opting for the Bortasqu over the Bortasqu for those that have both of them. So there definitely is things to consider with both of those starships. The Bortasqu has an enhanced battle cloak and the Bortasqu doesn't, so that is something for the Bortasqu, but otherwise they are very comparable. Now, when it comes to tanking, I do just want to mention this because there are a couple of new things with tanking. The two standard ships are still the 2 standard ships. I mean, we have the lockbox sticks if you are doing a pre-made with somebody who isn't going to be mine layering. If you are going to be doing a pre-made with somebody who isn't going to be who is mind layering, the Undine Battlecruiser is going to be the way to go. The thing about the sticks, what makes it good, just as an FYI, is that it has a lot of these debuffing stuff in here. Suppression Barrage, Attack Pattern Beta, pretty good. Now, one of the things in the patch notes over the past couple of years that has changed and made these better is that torpedoes from Hangar Pets no longer steal concentrate firepower procs, which is a really, really big deal for a lot of your high-end DPS builds. So it means that excuse to not have these frigates is no longer a thing. You're only not going to use Hangar Pets in your teams if the spawning issue from having lots and lots of mines is an issue. So if that's not an issue, then have Hangar Pets. If it is going to be an issue for your particular pre-made team, then don't use Hangar Pets. Both of these are very comparable to the Terran Empire frigates, are a smidget better. And unlike what this screenshot is, the Terran Empire frigates can also be used on the Terran Acheron, which is the 2-hanger version of the sticks that loses a weapon slot in order to get that extra hanger bay. And the Acheron is really more of a support-based build. You can do it kind of like support tank, but it's more leans towards really pure support, in my opinion. The mainland support frigates are usable on any 2-hanger carrier or the Scimitar. The other support frigates are just usable on any 2-hanger carrier. So if you're someone that is willing to use a flight deck carrier, we do have 2 command flight deck carriers in the game now. That wasn't the case a few years ago. We do still have the classic of the Both Rampart, which I still think is a fantastic ship. Also, if you want a solid upgrade to the Legendary Odyssey, this is a fantastic starship to do that on. Just as an FYI. The Friendship class is a bit of an upgrade over the Rampart, though. It's got the exact same bridge operator specialization seating as the Styx. The Styx is Commander Command and Lieutenant Commander Intel. The Friendship class is the exact same thing, but with an extra hangar bay and a battle cloak. So there are some advantages for the Friendship class over the Styx. However, the Styx is Lieutenant Science, and you can have double Lieutenant Commander Tactical on the Styx. So depending on what you're wanting to do with your specific bridge option layout, the Friendship class may be better, or the Styx may be better. But this is the reason why you do see Friendship class starships from time to time in Star Trek Online even today, because if the bridge options are comparable to you, then you're probably going to pick the Friendship class over the Styx if you aren't a tank captain. Just saying. I do think both are fine. Also keep in mind as well, the Both Rampart is a counter lockable via a Muds Market bundle. The Styx is a counter lockable via the recent Terran Anniversary bundle. So if you buy the whole bundle, so both those options are available. Like a counter lock if you're willing to pay a lot of money for. The Friendship is still a single character only starship. Now, as for other tanks, if you're willing to go way off meta and not use Commander Command, the Kronos is probably still the best recommendation at this point, simply because the 31st Century set has that taunt console in there. And having extra taunts in maps is really nice, especially if you're trying to support somebody who happens to do really high burst damage with lots of crits, and taunts can make sure that they don't get the threat during that. So the Kronos is really great in that regard. If the 31st Century set is usable on all starships at some point in the future, then the Kronos will drop completely away. But until then, the Kronos is still fine. I am slightly hesitant to recommend the Terran Sirius, simply because it is from that same bundle where if you buy the whole bundle, you can get the Styx. And from a meta standpoint, there's almost no reason to use the Sirius over the Styx if you're buying a bundle getting both. That being said, the Sirius does have more Space Barbie options over the Styx. So if Space Barbie is a priority for you, you can use any of the Galaxy X type of modifications on the Sirius, and the ship is fine. It's got reasonable durability. Its maneuverability is about the same as most of the other Galaxy X's in the game, frankly. And command and merit worker isn't bad. It's not the best, but it's not bad. If you're going to the fleet and you want commander command for your seating, I think these two are still your best options. You have the fleet coach, which is the KDF version of the Cardenas. Again, the difference between those two ships is that the coach is uglier, but gets a battle cloak in Constellation, which from a number standpoint is just better because you basically can decloak right at the very beginning of combat to get an additional burst of damage initially to help hold that threat at the very beginning of a particular run. If you want something a little different than that, the new Tier 6 Star Cruiser that came out recently is a decent option as well. It's got a bit more maneuverability for the cost that your shields are meaningfully lower than the Fleet Coach and Fleet Cardenas. But again, it's another starship that's from reasonable fleet military, and this is just a classic as well. Now, of course, if you are wanting hangar pets, you can always just go with the Fleet Sublimed Select Flight Deck Assault Carrier. The downside of that ship, of course, is that you're stuck with just a Lieutenant Commander command seat and nothing else. But you do have 2 hangar bays, so you can get suppression barrage via your hangar pets, via those support frigates, and the stats are still fine. The stats are very close to what the Justiciar has in terms of its durability and maneuverability, and its commander engineering with double lieutenant commander, double lieutenant commander tactical, lieutenant tactical here, and that lieutenant commander tactical is tactical/command. So if you're wanting that is an option too for the fleet. Just isn't going to be as ideal as having full engineering command. All right, with that tanking rant out of the way, let's get to the Legendary Avenger, shall we? As for the Avenger, it's surprisingly good. I'm really surprised that Cryptic had let the ship go as it is here. Then again, I think they just want to make sure that the bundle sold, frankly. Because beyond the ships themselves, we're not getting a lot of unique things in the bundle, and there was a lot of trash in there, especially for players that have been playing and getting stuff from most of the events. So the whole is fine. The shields are really low. When you're looking at specialization seating, it has the same specialization combination as the promo inquiry. This shouldn't be a wonder. Now it's interesting that they did not change the specialization at all, but they didn't. So this does devalue the inquiry. A lot of the uniqueness of that ship is now gone. What you would still fly the inquiry for is the higher shield ratio. 1.15 versus 0.8 is a very, very big difference. Also, if you're wanting double lieutenant commander tactical, the inquiry is still the Starship ship to give you that. Because again, the Fleet Avenger was able to do that. The inquiry can do that. The Legendary Avenger cannot do that. So, but then again, if what you were doing on the actual Avenger originally was to use the highest intel power for OSS 3, which you will probably still want to do on the Legendary Avenger, there's not going to be as much of a difference between all these different starships for builds in practice. And so there is definitely that. Now, I know some people on Reddit were like, oh wow, this thing's got 5 tactical consoles over in Inquiries 4. Keep in mind, in the modern energy-based meta, it's better to have more engineering consoles than tactical, because of those new engineering consoles that were released that give you lots of weapon power. So when it comes to the modern meta, the Inquiry is better for its console layout. That being said, it's still a Merrick Worker Starship, so you still have plenty of consoles if you want to go down that route still. Now, when it comes to its base stats perspective, I, of course, initially thought of the Legendary Sovereign, because it was a Miracle Worker Starship that had lower than a 1.1 shield ratio. As I mentioned many times in the past, if a ship has lower than a 1.1 shield ratio, basically consider the ship as just not having shields. And if you're going to be building around survival, it's going to be hull only. The Avenger basically went full in on that. It's like, all right, if lower than 1.1 doesn't matter, then let's just go super low and have it 0.8, so that people really know that the shields do not matter on the ship. So that's what they did here. Legendary Excelsior's got that 1.1, so if you want something like the Sovereign and are willing to buy a horrible bundle to get something a little better, Excelsior might be an option for you, and are willing to broadside. Now, the Eternal Lexington, of course, is a starship that has been a little devalued because of how, the fact that the flagship bundle can be used on all starships now. So there is that. But still, if you're wanting a single starship purchase from the C-Store for 3,000 Zen, instead of buying something like this, the Eternal Lexington still looks cool, and, it's still a great broadsiding ship. And it's also a Miracle Worker Intel. It's Lieutenant Intel, so Lieutenant Commander Intel, but it's still comparable in that regard, at least. Of course, we have our really classic Valor Juggernaut. That is Miracle Worker and Intel. But again, its flexibility leaves a lot to be desired there. However, because it's from an older meta, it's got 5 tactical consoles instead of 5 engineering, so it does have some of those downsides that the Avenger has still too over the Inquiry. Now, as for the more interesting stuff, when I initially thought we were going to let Legendary Adventure, I thought it was going to be Commander Engineering Intel, which would have been a direct comparison to these two starships. I still think that both these are very comparable still, because they have comparable maneuverability, and they're great on the DPS charts for energy-based builds. Of course, the Legendary TOS-D7 had a lot of comparisons to the Inquiry on its initial launch, because it's literally the Inquiry, except it swapped its specialization seats. As you remember, the Inquiry is Commander Miracle Worker, Lieutenant Commander Intel. This ship is Commander Intel, Lieutenant Commander Miracle Worker. But otherwise, it's basically the same thing, but it's KDF with a battle cloak. So, with the way that specializations have been buffed, it is a great starship now. But of course, we have a slightly cheaper option as well in the C-Store, and that's the Terran Hydra, which is an Intel destroyer. Another one of those starships from that bundle that has Commander specialization and Lieutenant Commander specialization as a single purchase 3,000 Zen starship. Those starships that we got were so good in that regard. I'm surprised I'm surprised Cryptic let that power exist in a 3,000 Zen starship, even if it was part of a big bundle that they were trying to really push to get people to buy it because they were really desperate, and so they added 2 lockbox starships, and they added the mirror crossfield, which people didn't care about, and then they added the sticks, which divided the series in the bundle. But it is what it is. The Terran Hydra is a fantastic ship, so don't sleep on it. I haven't talked about it much on the channel because I haven't been making videos for 2 years now. It is a great ship. So, if you were considered it before, yes, it is a good ship. As for other Federation ships for Miracle Worker, we of course had the Fleet Miracle Worker Battlecruisers. Again, this is still a great ship. If you don't really care as much about the intel stuff and just want Miracle Worker with a 5/3 weapon layout, this is still a great ship to choose. I will say, from a lore standpoint, the Arbiter Avenger line was succeeded by the modern version of the Shepherd line. If you want to see the lore blogs and descriptions for what's going on with that, that was what happened with this particular starship, And so yeah, the Starship is good. It's a little sad that the Inquiry and the Legendary Avenger are both better than it. But I mean, we've gotten two different versions of the Shepherd now. We've got the Caesar version, and we also got the Mirror version through a previous event. So we might get a worthy legendary successor to this ship eventually. Until then, the Avenger and the Inquiry are just better ships. Then, of course, if you don't really care about intel and just want hangar bays, the Promo Discovery Worker Flight Deck Carrier is definitely an option too, although much more expensive. And then lastly, I just wanted to end with a couple of maneuverable ships, because I mean this ship's supposed to be a bit more maneuverable than the Bortasqu, so might as well include some maneuverable ships here too. We have the Legendary Avenger pilot attack ship, which was definitely designed for PvP in mind, with pilot intel. Those are both really strong in PvP. With their buffs for PvE, they're also fine here too. And then of course we have the Terran version of the Defiant, which is a raider. It's got a built-in battle cloak instead of having to use consoles to get that battle cloak. For the consolation of losing one rear weapon to do so, because it's a raider now instead of a warship or a regular escort. So both the ships are fine as well, and decent for considerations too. Before I conclude the video, I do just want to talk about a couple of science ships, just because I mean I haven't been making videos for 2 years, so it'd be good to talk about those a little bit as well. Because of recent ships that have come out, I mean the general recommendation for players in a fleet without really much stuff in them right now, I would recommend the Fleet Nova. It has very high flexibility in bridge officer seats. Now there is no special agent seat that's like super good on it for EPG, because you generally want intel or temporal for that. But I mean it's got fully flexible bridge officer seats, and you want its commander to be tactical anyway, or science. So it's definitely a great ship. The Lucari Junior is a better ship, but I mean the Junior requires tier 5 fleet colony. And I'm not really going to be expecting every fleet that you join to already have a pre-built tier 5 fleet colony to be able to get a Lucari scout ship. So again, the Lucari line is also another one that I would expect in the next few years to get a legendary starship, because we do have 2 tier 6 versions of the Lucari line. We have the Lucari Drenur here, as well as the Lucari Hokun event ship from back in the day. And then we have the tier 5 UFO from lockboxes. So I definitely expect a legendary Lucari Kumarke's science vessel to show up at some point in the next 2 years. If you don't care about pure science and want to go with like a weapons-based build, the Fleet Titan is definitely the way to go. Whether you want to do Sci-Torp or want to do an energy-based science build, I think the Titan is going to be your best candidate from the fleet for both options. Granted, if you're doing an energy-based science, there isn't specialization stuff that is really lending to it with the ship, but you do have tactical mode, so you can still get commander tactical abilities on this ship to lend to that stuff well. And it's also got good durability too, so that's definitely going to help. If you're going a little bit more expensive, the Eternal's a fun classic. It is starting to get more and more outclassed with more and more ships being added to the game. That being said, science, is added at half the pace that your other cruisers and escorts are being added to the game. So it is what it is. If you're wanting just normal Sci-Torp with Commander Command, the Terran Trailblazer from the C-Store is really the go-to. You have to go super expensive in order to get better than this. And this is a decent combination, frankly. Now for the 10th anniversary bundle, the Legendary Glen is a really great combination too. If you're wanting Sci-Torp with Commander Temporal, then really this is like one of your best combinations. In order to get better than that, you have to really go ahead and go to the promo packs and go to the promo tier 6 Dakir. Now it's not called the Dakir, but I consider this the tier 6 Dakir in practice. It's basically just the Legendary Glen, but it's a spearhead now instead of a science vessel, so it's got an extra weapon, and British Overseas is a little bit better when it comes to side torp stuff. If you're wanting a side torp ship with commander command, then the Courage class is the ship that you're going to want to use, because it's got a battle cloak, it's got tactical mode, 4-3, all that fun stuff. And of course, like normal, if you're wanting pure science, Cryptic is still letting the Tier 6 Vern and its Klingon and Romulan counterparts be the best ship in the game for that. Now, I mean, there's a lot of other Federation ships that are close, as I've noted, but when it comes to KDF and Romulan, there really aren't. And I mean, to be honest, if you're actually looking at Romulan ships and Klingon ships for full specialization stuff, when it comes to starships with commander science plus a secondary deflector plus full spec, like it almost doesn't exist at all. Like the only one that technically exists in this is the Discovery era science vessel. It's the only one that has a commander specialization on a science vessel with a secondary deflector. It's the only one. And Intel's not really even like the best specialization for science. So it is kind of sad, but it kind of is what it is. KDF and Romulan's ships really are struggling when it comes to exotic based builds in this game. And unfortunately, with the way a lot of the recent Trek series are right now, that's not going to change anytime soon. The only hope that we have of that actually changing anytime soon, especially if we wanted a unique, KDF Romulan starship that actually had special agency that was different from Federation counterparts, would be if we ever got the Tier 6 legendary versions of the Dyson Science Destroyers. By the way, if Cryptic ever released that, it would have to be like a 20,000 Zen bundle, and they would probably put in the Legendary Titan Science Destroyer in there too, and make it like a 4 starship bundle. And because it would have to be 20,000 Zen because of the animations on the Dyson Science Destroyers. But yeah, that's basically it for my rants for today. Hopefully that was fun for you all. Hopefully my horrible mic is bearable for you all. I just decided, since I'm making one video, I'm not even sure if I'm going to keep on doing videos going forward still, because I did a 2-year break, and with the way my life is right now, I'm probably going to stay busy, super busy, for probably at least the next 4 years, if not longer. So was it really going to be worthwhile for me to take out my mic, spend a few hours sending it up just for one video? Probably not. We'll see in time if I feel like making more videos, but really at this point, when it comes to like Starship comparisons and stuff, for the most part, if I think there's something very noteworthy to comment on, generally the community tab is where you can find that out. So if you want to subscribe to see if I do updates there, feel free. This isn't really going to be a normal like, hey, subscribe to get more videos. It's like videos, if more come out, are probably going to be super infrequent. So also because of that, I really doubt that this video is really going to get that many views. But anyway, thank you all for watching or listening, because most of you probably just listen to my stuff. If you like some of the old stuff, feel free to see some of the old stuff. I'll probably include in the description some of the stuff that I think is still most noteworthy for current consideration. Really, the away team sets made easy and the budget builds 2020 edition are still relevant, more because the budget builds thing doesn't use any FOMO stuff in there, which means it's basically going to be timeless unless Cryptic ever gets rid of previous missions or gets rid of stuff from reputations, which at this point I don't really see them doing. Now they have released, or they have gotten rid of episodes in the past for remastering. Well, saying they were going to remaster and then they haven't, like the Kuva Ma arc. But at least get rid of mission because of mission rewards. I don't really think they're gonna do that anytime in the near future. Which near future for at least me is probably like next 2 to 4 years inside of this game. So anyway, thank you all for watching and listening. And yeah, enjoy the rest of your weekend and your day.